Saturday morning, the Experts Program, kicking off here on Power Talk Radio, and Luis Alvarez, CEO of the Alvarez Technology Group, is with us. Hello, Luis.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Doing really well. We have a really fascinating topic today, and kind of a sad one as well. It deals with Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. What we're getting a look at here is not only what I guess you'd call in military terms, shock and awe, the kinds of things that the Russian military are doing, like just the other day, bombing, attempting to destroy a nuclear power plant. I still can't figure that one out. I know it's designed, in one way it's designed to put the hurt on Europe because a lot of the power generated by that plant in the Ukraine goes to European customers. But then at the same time, we all know about what happens with fallout. Mm-hmm. And what's Putin doing? He's going to blow up a reactor and release a bunch of nuclear fallout? So Russia's right next door to Ukraine. You want to poison your own people to make a point?
Yeah.
When I've heard some news reports or some opinion that Putin has become this mentally unstable guy, well, that to me says, I think there's some credence to those claims, because what sane person would blow up a nuclear power plant and risk poisoning his own troops and his own people? As a perpetrator of a war, you obviously want to wreak destruction and havoc on your opponents, but nuclear fallout is basically forever. And what are you doing? It's just bizarre.
Yeah, it is bizarre. And, the problem that you have is that you have this unstable human being that is now in charge of this country that apparently doesn't question his judgment, doesn't question anything that he's doing. And it could literally cause millions of deaths, because if they continue to, we're not even talking about the conventional side of things, like you pointed out, if they somehow destroy this nuclear power plant, the fallout alone would poison everything around that part of Europe for centuries to come.
Right.
You would figure they would have learned their lesson with Chernobyl, but apparently not.
And remember, the Fukushima plant that was damaged in the earthquake and the tidal wave a number of years ago, there was measurable amounts of fallout that made it to the Pacific coast of America, coming across the Pacific. So, How many thousands of miles away is Japan from, say, California or Washington State?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so in Chernobyl and Ukraine and Russia are right next to each other. It's frightening. It's ridiculous. It's unbelievable. But that said, the thing that we really want to talk about is cyber warfare. And we talk a lot about state actors that are behind malware, Trojan horses, cyber attacks. And this is one of the tools of war that the Russian government has used against the rest of the world. The cyber attacks and a lot of the malware that they have invented and prosecuted in peacetime. And now what we're worried about is not only are they using that malware against Ukrainians and Europe, but we're expecting that it's going to happen here in the U.S. What exactly is the nature of the threat, and how serious are our people in national security taking this?
It's an extremely serious threat. And in fact, yesterday, the FBI and the Center for Intelligence and Security at the federal level issued an urgent request to the business community at large to say, if you experience any sort of anything that you think is suspicious, report it, which is unusual. Normally, the FBI is very reluctant to take on any kind of these things. They're like, hey, make sure that before you report any incident that you have it vetted and all those sorts of things. Now they're basically saying it doesn't matter. Let us know. So what we're doing is, as a public service, if you feel that there's something going on that's suspicious or you're curious about, please email us at help@alvareztg.com.
Help@alvareztg.com. And we'll give that again at the end of the program.
Yeah. And what we'll do is we will go through those. And we're members of an organization called Infraguard, which is an FBI-sponsored national public-private partnership for cybersecurity. And we will take those and we will send those to the FBI and correlate those with other alerts that we're getting. But all of us in the industry are hyper vigilant right now. We're doing everything we possibly can to protect our clients, but also it's not just so much about building walls and moats, as I like to call it. It's also about detecting things and making sure that anything that's suspicious gets reported, because sometimes you have these threats that are called persistent threats that embed themselves and don't do anything right away, but over time start to affect networks. So we want to make sure that we detect those. The biggest concern that we have right now is that in the past, all the breaches and ransomware and all these cyber incidents that have occurred for a reason, right? To make money or to somehow disrupt things. means, well, now you have a nation in Russia that has the capability and the tools to just lash out across the world for absolutely no reason other than they're just not happy. And if that takes place, the concern is that there will be a lot of things going on that we've never experienced before because they've been holding back, and now they're going to unleash all of these weapons and all these capabilities that we haven't seen previously.
And you were saying that over the years, the suspicion has been that Russia has a lot more than they're showing. And they would, kind of dribble these malware, Trojan horses, this kind of stuff out. But now, with their back against the wall, they may decide to unleash the entire kitchen sink. So the negative, there's a negative and a positive with that as I see it. The negative is we're going to get hit with all of this stuff all at once, and it could be really disruptive. The positive out of that is if these guys shoot their load all right now, they have nothing left in the cupboard. And then it will take them down the line more R&D and more time to rebuild that arsenal of malware, which they will then start releasing again in a few years. But it will give perhaps our IT security establishment the opportunity to maybe backwards engineer this stuff and find out what is it that the Russians have, how did they do it? Oh, here's how they did it. Here's how you protect against it. So it ends up being a learning process, but it's one that could be a very disruptive learning process. And from what I'm seeing, what's really interesting, and we're seeing some of the power of social media in fighting this invasion of the Ukraine, and I see a lot of people with the gold and blue Ukrainian flag as part of their profile pictures and things like that. Some of that I think is just virtue signaling, but there are some very real things that are being coordinated across social media platforms as a means of protesting. Now that we're seeing there are large calls to boycott any and all Russian products. The first thing we saw was, hey, don't buy Russian vodka. Buy these other nations' vodkas. On a more substantive area or action, I read a story today that port workers in Los Angeles and Oakland are now refusing to offload cargo from Russian cargo ships. So that has to hurt Russia as well. So in a lot of respects, there's banking. They've become a pariah in the international finance community. They're really getting hurt that way financially. There's a lot that we can do without throwing missiles and bombs at Russia to basically let them know, hey, the world really strongly disapproves of what you're doing and you need to stop. It'll probably take longer than, say, a conventional war, but it's interesting because we're using the power of social media and the internet to coordinate a lot of these kinds of protests against Putin and the Russians.
Yeah. I mean, this is where the internet has really become a unifying force across the world to oppose what's going on in Russia. And, it's only been a week. And I think just the impact of 1 week's worth of sanctions and world condemnation has already roiled Russia. Lord knows what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks.
Right. And Louis, as we wrap up here, let's once again give that special email address that you gave us earlier in the program for businesses or individuals that want information on how they can contact you folks for services to fight the presence of malware, Trojan horses, and so forth that may be coming from Russia.
Yeah, please email us at help@alvareztg.com.
All right, that's help, H-E-L-P, @alvareztg.com. And that's Louis Alvarez, CEO of the Alvarez Technology Group, online, alvareztg.com, @alvareztg. That's the Twitter handle. And Louis, the toll-free number for the I-Team.
Give us a call at 866-78-I-TEAM. That's 866-784-8326.
And that's help @alvareztg.com. Thank you, Louis.
Thank you, Mark.